Over the decades, we've got some good and bad remakes, and sometimes we end up with straight up trash like this, or remakes that feel unnecessary like. But then again, we also got genuinely great remakes, such as some remakes feel unnecessary not because the remake itself is bad, but because the original game still holds up perfectly well today. And when a remake doesn't significantly improve gameplay or mechanics, it can feel more like a graphical update being sold at full price rather than a true reimagining. With classic RPGs, a remake is something that we always see nowadays. A second remake though, that's something you don't see very often in a game. Yet that's exactly the case with Dragon Quest VII Reimagined. For me, a second remake is such a strange yet fascinating concept, and by this point, the developers should know what worked and what didn't in the previous remake. This raises an important question. If the game has already been remade once, what exactly justifies doing it again? Dragon Quest VII was the best-selling PlayStation game of all time in Japan back in 2001, even surpassing Final Fantasy VII, at least in the Japanese market. And not just the best-selling, it's one of the most ambitious entries in the entire series, with its massive world, time travel mechanics, and incredibly long playtime. And I mean, really long. It left a huge mark on the RPG genre. It received its first remake on the Nintendo 3DS in 2013, with a global release following in 2016 in North America. However, as many fans know, that version came with its own set of flaws. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined aims to refine and improve what came before, focusing on enhancing its strengths while updating the visuals and gameplay to better match modern gaming standards. The story is set on a small, secluded island with our protagonist living a quiet life as the son of a humble fisherman. Alongside him are his friends, Kiefer, a young prince who acts like an older brother figure, and Maribel, a sharp-tongued but spirited village girl. Together, they stumble upon the existence of a mysterious island said to lie beyond the seas surrounding their home of Vestard. At first, this discovery feels more like a childhood adventure rather than the beginning of some grand journey. I feel like there's a strong sense of innocence here. None of the characters see themselves as heroes. They're just curious kids trying to uncover something the world seemed to have forgotten. That sense of curiosity becomes the emotional foundation of the entire story. What makes this setup so effective is how grounded it feels. Vestard isn't a grand kingdom or a war-torn land. It's peaceful, almost mundane, as you can see, where people go about their daily lives, unaware that anything beyond their shores could even exist. This isolation gives the world a dreamlike quality, as if reality itself has quietly shrunk over time. As the trio begins to explore, the story slowly peels back layers of mystery. The mysterious island isn't just another landmass, it represents questions the world has buried. As why is it hidden? Why does no one talk about places beyond Vestard? And what happened to the world as it once was? The game doesn't rush to answer these questions, instead letting intrigue build naturally through exploration and discovery. Kiefer plays an especially important role in driving the early narrative. As a prince, he has grown restless with the limitations of his sheltered life. His desire to see the wider world contrasts beautifully with the protagonist's quieter, more grounded nature. Their friendship feels somewhat genuine, like two people standing at different crossroads in life, united by the same longing for something more. Maribel, on the other hand, brings a completely different energy to the group. She's outspoken, sometimes sarcastic, and never afraid to speak her mind. But beneath that tough exterior is someone deeply affected by the changes happening around her. Her presence keeps the story emotionally honest, often grounding the more fantastical elements with raw human reactions. Dragon Quest VII doesn't tell its story in a traditional linear way. Instead of following a single, continuous storyline, the game is built around discovery. You find ancient stone tablets scattered throughout the island, and by restoring these fragments, you unlock access to long-lost islands. Once a tablet is completed, The protagonist and his friends are transported to one of these islands as it existed in the past. There, you slowly learn what happened to that land, to its people, its conflict, and the events that led to its disappearance. Your goal isn't just to explore but to help resolve the crisis threatening that island, and in doing so, prevent it from being wiped out entirely. Because of this structure, the story feels almost episodic. Each island functions like its own self-contained chapter, with a beginning, middle, and end. You're constantly moving back and forth between the past and the present, watching how your actions reshape the world over time. Seeing an island return or change after completing its story gives the narrative a strong sense of cause and effect. At its core, the story is actually very simple. There's no constant exposition dump or overwhelming lore thrown at you. Instead, Dragon Quest VII let its theme unfold naturally through smaller, more personal stories. This approach gives the game a unique rhythm that sets it apart from other RPGs of its era. Personally, I really like this structure. It makes every island feel somewhat meaningful, and it keeps the journey fresh by constantly introducing new settings and characters. That said, I can completely understand why this storytelling style isn't for everyone. The pacing can sometimes feel slow, and if you're someone who prefers a strong central plot pushing you forward at all times, this episodic format might feel disjointed. But for players who enjoy gradual world building and stories that reward patience, Dragon Quest VII offers something rare, a narrative that's less about racing toward an ending and more about understanding the world one story at a time. There's nothing fundamentally new about the gameplay itself. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined sticks to the same turn-based combat system the series has been using for decades. If you've played a Dragon Quest game before, you might feel at home immediately. The commands, party-based battles, and a steady rhythm that hasn't changed much over the years. Instead of reinventing the combat, the game focuses on flexibility. One of the more interesting additions is the ability to freely adjust the difficulty settings. This lets players adjust the experience to how they actually want to play. If you're someone who plays RPGs mainly for the stories and doesn't really care about grinding, you can tweak the settings to gain more experience from battles. You can even go as far as making monsters completely non-aggressive, turning the encounters into something you engage with only when you feel like it. On the other hand, if you're the kind of player who enjoys being pushed to the limit, or let's be honest, enjoys being tortured by game systems, you can crank things up. Enemies can hit harder, you can earn less experience, and every fight suddenly demands careful planning and resource management. This approach doesn't make the gameplay revolutionary, but it does make it more accessible and customizable than ever. Whether you want a relaxed, story-focused journey or a punishing old-school RPG experience, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined gives you the freedom to decide how painful or painless the adventure you want to have. When your party's level is high enough, the game gives you more control over how you deal with the enemies in the field. You can simply jump on weaker monsters from behind and take them out instantly with one hit without entering a full battle. If you still want to fully engage with enemies, you can choose to approach them head-on or even let them hit you first to trigger the fight. Of course, if you chose the first option, you'll be rewarded with less experience compared to a normal encounter. But because there are so many enemies, you can still earn as much experience as you want just by taking them out as many times as you want. In practice, this turns the system into a flexible form of experience farming. You can clear the areas quickly when you're over-leveled, or you can still slow things down and grind if you feel like it. There are also puzzle elements in this game, but honestly, they're not very challenging at all. To be fair, puzzles are meant to be a major focus in this game, and sure, the game has never really presented itself as a puzzle-heavy experience. That said, I still feel like the puzzles could have been made more engaging than what we ended up with. Even small increases in complexity or creativity would have gone a long way. As they are now, most puzzles feel more like brief roadblocks than meaningful challenges, like it's something you solve quickly and then immediately move on from. They don't ruin the experience by any means, but they do feel like a missed opportunity. especially in a remake that aims to modernize and refine the original design. I really love how they structure the world here, especially the way the islands are designed. The textures, colors, and overall presentation feel vibrant without being distracting, and everything just looks pleasant to explore. It has that classic Dragon Quest charm where the world feels colorful and inviting rather than hyper-realistic. Visually, the scale is clearly smaller than Dragon Quest XI, but that doesn't hurt the experience at all. Walking around the islands and towns still feels satisfying, and every area feels thoughtfully put together. There's a sense of connection in how the environments are laid out, which makes exploration feel rewarding even on a smaller map. A big reason this works so well is the art style. Square Enix really nailed it here. The visuals strike a great balance. They make the world feel lively and expressive without overwhelming the player. Instead of relying on flashy effects or excessive detail, the game uses color, shape, and animation to bring the world to life in a way that feels timeless. Overall, the art direction fits this game perfectly. It enhances immersion, reinforces the tone of the story, and makes simply moving through the world an enjoyable experience on its own. Also, as you run around the towns, you can interact with the people, barge into their houses, and basically poke around and break their things. Classic Dragon Quest behavior. On top of that, you can pet the dogs and cats you find along the way. It's a small attention to detail, but it adds a lot of charm to the world. This little interaction makes the towns feel more alive and personal, and I really appreciate the care that they put into touches like this. It's the kind of thing that doesn't change the gameplay in any major way, but it definitely makes the experience more memorable. At first, I noticed the world map feels almost empty, but as you progress through the story, that emptiness slowly fades. Island by island, the map begins to fill in, and there's a real sense of contentment in watching places that once vanished return to existence. Seeing the world take shape over time makes the journey feel purposeful, almost like you're actively rebuilding it. That growing sense of completion is one of the most rewarding aspects of the game. The map isn't just something you travel across, it becomes a visual reflection of your progress, reinforcing the idea that your actions are restoring what was once lost. That said, the game isn't without its flaws. I don't know if it's just me, but when you're sailing across the sea, there's a noticeable lack of ambient sound. You don't hear the water, the waves, or even the subtle noise you'd expect from a moving ship. It's almost completely silent. It's a small detail, but it stands out because of how important atmosphere is in a game like this. Adding sea sounds or gentle water effects when you're traveling with your ship could have gone a long way in making sailing feel more immersive. There's definitely a room for improvement here, and it feels like a missed opportunity to enhance immersion during what should be a relaxing and atmospheric part of the adventure. Square Enix treats Dragon Quest VII Reimagined like how I would treat my not-so-soon unborn child, and that is with love. They've created an incredibly charming world paired with beautiful visuals and gameplay that stays true to the series' core. What really stands out though is the improved pacing. In the original version and even the first remake, finishing the game could easily take around 100 hours. This time, that experience has been streamlined to roughly 40 hours, showing real respect for the player's time without sacrificing what makes the game special. In the end, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined feels like a thoughtful balance between honoring a classic and adapting it for modern audiences. It doesn't try to reinvent what already works, instead it refines it, polishes it, and presents it in a way that feels more accessible than ever. This game is very forgiving toward new players, and if you're not usually a fan of RPGs, I honestly think this could be a great starting point. It gives you the freedom to shape the experience the way you want. The game can be merciful or completely merciless, it all depends on how you choose to play it. Whether you want a relaxed, story-focused journey or a challenging old-school RPG experience, Dragon Quest VII Reimagined adapts to you rather than forcing you into a single playstyle. It's not a perfect game. There are small flaws and missed opportunities along the way, but none of them take away from the overall experience. What remains is an RPG that feels warm, thoughtful, and rewarding, one that values patience, curiosity, and the joy of discovery. Dragon Quest VII Reimagined proves that sometimes a classic doesn't need to be reinvented to feel relevant. With its charm, flexibility, and thoughtful improvements, it offers an experience that respects both the past and the player. If you enjoyed this not-so-serious review of Dragon Quest VII Reimagined, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Until next time.